Hi, everybody. I think we're going to get started, even though there's a few more people filtering in just for the sake of time here. So thank you so much for joining us. At CDRPC, we're going to be talking about our regional climate action plan today and ways that your municipality can get involved in this process. To just kick it off here with some housekeeping. We don't have a chat open for this because there's quite a few people we have on here, but we do have a question and answer box that you can fill out if you have questions as you go along. We'll be answering questions at the end of the webinar. So even if you put them in early, we won't be looking at them to the end just to keep the flow of things. So put your questions in there and let's kick it off. So just so you guys know who was talking today, I'm just going to give a little overview of our presenters here. So we've got Todd Fabozzi, who's our Director of Sustainability here at CDRPC. Myself, Tara Donadio, I'm the Assistant Director of Sustainability. I'm going to be talking a little bit about greenhouse gas inventories. And then finally, Haley Belkanoff, who is our sustainability planner here at CDRPC, who's going to be talking about climate action planning. So without further ado, Todd.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining. So to give some background and a broad overview of the plan, I'll start just by noting that about 2 years ago, the Capital Region was presented the opportunity to undertake a climate action plan funded by EPA. This was an opportunity provided to metropolitan regions across the country. Over 60 regions based on population were provided that opportunity, and each state was individually provided the opportunity to do their own plan as well. So in New York State, the regions that undertook plans were New York City Metro and Buffalo region and the Rochester region and the Capital region. So the plan, the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, is a mitigation plan. So what I mean by that is that the focus of this particular plan is to look for ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as they contribute to global warming. And so that's the focus of this. We're not focused in this plan on adaptation and resilience, which are other factors related to climate change, but in this case, just mitigation measures. Next slide, please. So we had a 2-year window to develop this plan. The way we went about it was to develop a series of work groups and a municipal guidance group to start. So we created this overarching framework of a Capital Region Climate Action Collaborative, and it is a voluntary, loose-base affiliation of regional organizations and municipal bodies that are taking climate action and that have been taking climate action. And we've focused on essentially trying to document the kinds of things we are already doing in the region as a starting point. So our plan really is a container for the best practices for GHG mitigation based on the kinds of feedback we got from the engagement that, again, was a municipal advisory group that guided our process along the way for the 2-year period. And it was a series of sector-based work groups and people that were working on those particular sector tasks as part of their regular work or were experts or had expertise. So for example, transportation, we worked with our transportation council and with our transit authority to be able to develop the kinds of mitigation measures that they embrace. And so then in addition to the regional sector work groups to develop the mitigation measures, we also, once we had draft measures put together, we did a series of workshops. They were digital, they were in video workshops, and we did 5 different ones throughout the last winter to be able to get input on more detailed about what we were doing, and provided a worksheet in which we developed that any municipality could download and be able to make comments about the draft measures, be able to add other measures that we may have overlooked or to note ones that they didn't think we should include. So that was a process then that went on for several months of those presentations, and then once we received the feedback from that, we fine-tuned the measures to be able to then utilize or to be able to move forward with some of the other tasks involved in this plan. So next slide, please. And so this is just a screenshot of the various measures, an example of the kind of measures that we have, and we have them for each of these different sectors noted here. Given this framework and the hour that we have to present and take questions, this isn't the place to get into every one of those measures. What we're encouraging you to do is to be able to download the plan and review it. And a lot of the focus of how we're going to implement this plan is going to be to continue to work with local municipalities and on a one-to-one basis where we can really delve into the particulars of your community, be able to look at the kinds of go through the measures and look at what it is you may want to undertake or what you may already have been undertaking. Next slide, please. So part of the plan was to develop a greenhouse gas inventory. Now, CDRPC had developed an inventory and based on 2010 data. So we've had an existing inventory, and this funding opportunity and initiative gave us the impetus to develop a new inventory. And not only that, but then to be able to create, and what we did was create a dashboard that we have online at our website and as part of an online climate action portal that we'll talk about later in this presentation. But it allowed us to then create a comparison with what we did in 2010, where we were in 2010, and where we are at this point in time. And the last data set that we were able to get was for 2022. So we had a 12-year snapshot of where we've been for the last 12 years. So our baseline then was 2010 for this plan. So you can see a snapshot here from the dashboard. It's an interactive dashboard in which we encourage you to check that out. And later in this presentation, Tara's going to go over that dashboard and how we can work with you on that. And you can see from this screenshot where our emissions as a region are coming from and the total emissions, and the majority of the emissions are coming from the built environment and the transportation sector, with other emissions from some of the other sectors, but not as big as transportation and the built environment. And so then let's go on to the next slide. Tara will get into the details of the inventory later on in this presentation. But I just want to note then the change. So what we've seen in our comparison of what happened and where we were in 2010 and where we are in 2022 is we saw an 8% decrease in emissions, which is a positive and reflects the kinds of actions that municipalities are taking, that individuals are taking. It's the uptake of beneficial electrification, installing heat pumps, the purchasing of electric vehicles, and also a cleaner grid based on the new sustainable and clean energy inputs to the grid that the state is backing, and also efficiency in vehicle fleets. So all of these factors have helped to push our emissions downward. Next slide, please. So part of this, the requirements for this plan were to look at projections out to the future and where we may end up with a reduction in emissions. So we have a business as usual baseline if we didn't do anything, and then we have projected emissions out to 2035 and out to 2050. Next slide, please. And also to look at the potential reductions per sector. What would be the reductions per sector, which is what we show in this slide. And again, I'm not going to get into all the specifics of this here, but just to show the potential reductions possible, continuing on the trajectory of the uptake that we've seen in the last 12 years and a continuation of that out to 2035 and then out to 2050. Next slide, please. And we also were required to look at the co-benefits that may result from the reduction in greenhouse gases that come from air pollutants, other co-air pollutants, and hazardous air pollutants, and calculated what the potential benefit of the reduction of those could amount to. Next slide, please. So we were required also to set targets. And so what we did was to set targets based essentially around our projections so that we thought they were reasonable and possible rather than overreaching. And so where our projections saw a 20%, 21% decrease by 2035. So we set our target for 2035 to be in that same ballpark at 20%. And we looked at out to 2050 and we saw a potential from our projections of 68%. And so we set a target for 65%. And so these are targets that are based on the potential evolution and uptake of this technology, which mostly they're technologies and practices. So heat pumps and electric vehicles as technologies and smart meters and those kinds of things and solar panels. So a lot of these are technology based, and they will continue to be improved upon, and they will continue to be reduced in price. And we expect a lot of voluntary uptake. So we did take a stance with this plan to say it isn't backing or saying that we need to mandate or to prohibit anything, but that we see a continual evolution of our uptake in these cleaner technologies and embracing basically an all of the above approach to this evolution so that we don't find ourselves pushing things that result in not having adequate energy sources to run our society, because we do see an increase in demand with AI, with cryptocurrency, with just basic growth. And so we're seeing in general an increased demand that we don't want to find ourselves falling short of by getting rid of certain sources like natural gas before replacing them with cleaner energy sources. So next slide, please. So I'd like to turn it over then to Tara Donadio, and she will get into the details of our inventories and how local communities can work with us to understand your inventories and to start the process of climate action planning. Tara?
Thanks so much, Todd. Just a reminder for anybody that joined a little late, we are taking questions at the end, so just keep putting them in the Q&A box and we'll get to those all at the end. So much. So talking about greenhouse gas inventories and basically what they are and how we can support your community in interpreting the data from our emissions inventory that we did for 2022 for this climate action planning process. So just kind of taking a step back here and talking a little bit about what inventories are and how we define them. I think it's critical. So basically we've got this entire region, the 8-county capital region, that we developed this inventory for and climate action plan for. And we're looking here at community-wide inventories. So this would be every single emission, every vehicle, every person, every house, every business within this geographic area. That's a community-wide inventory. So that is what we focused on. That is the emissions that you will see here. And we do have that data for every single municipality within the capital region as well. So we can kind of help you look into this, and I can talk about that in a few minutes. But just so you understand what that means, we've got this, obviously this regional map, and then we've got, for example, Rensselaer County, which we have the emissions for the county community as a whole. We also have the city of Troy, which is within the county. We also have the town of Schodack and the village of Castleton-on-Hudson, which is a part of the town of Schodack, but obviously its own entity and has its own residents. So all of that data is broken out in our dashboard. And we can help you look into this. And just highlighting here too, what a municipal inventory is, because I think a lot of you maybe on this call have undertaken municipal inventories for your community as part of our CDRPC support. What that is just the government operations for the community. So just the government buildings and the government fleet, which is part of the community inventory, of course, which includes everything, but is its own thing. And, obviously you have your own responsibility for that piece of things. So I hope this kind of visual makes it a little clearer what we're talking about when we mean community and municipal inventory. And a little bit more inventory 101 here. So just looking at kind of the 3 S's, the sector, source, and scope, which are kind of the ways that we define inventories and break things out. Starting with sector, this is the category or part of an economy where the emissions happen. So we decided to kind of, obviously create the same sectors that most inventories have, but you have to name them. So we decided on built environment made sense to us instead of maybe buildings. We also have transportation, agriculture, waste, industry. So those are the sectors that we've defined in this community-wide inventory. Then you have source. So source is where is the thing that produces the greenhouse gases. So it's going to be something like natural gas or fuel oil or electricity. Each of these sources have their own emissions that we can kind of look at and analyze. And then, of course, we have scope, which is a classification framework for emissions inventories, basically defining which emissions are counted based on ownership or control. So it helps us kind of target who's responsible for those emissions and how do we kind of further break those down into categories that make sense. So we've got scope 1, which are emissions that occur directly within the regional boundary or community boundary. So combustion, things like natural gas or gasoline powered vehicles, all of those things are scope 1. Scope 2, which is electricity consumed within the region, but that it might be based on a mix of power plants supplying the upstate New York grid. So electrons, of course, we don't generate all the electrons for all the energy use in the capital region right here. We generate them across potentially the upstate New York grid. So it's just a matter of defining the ones that we are using here. And then you've got scope 3, which are emissions that occur outside the region, but are a result of activities within the regional or community boundary. So now that you're all experts on greenhouse gases, we will move on to the dashboard that Todd mentioned before, which is this way that we kind of have to visualize this data and basically kind of dive into it. So we've got, and I'm going to click on this and hopefully get to a point where I can share with you the actual dashboard. Let's see. Bear with me here. I just need to move this over and move it back again. So give me 1 second. All right. This should look better. So this is our regional dashboard that Todd mentioned before. And as you can see, it's interactive. So you can kind of click through it on sector and subsector. You can see the pies, and you can kind of dive in and further see the subsectors of these different categories. You also can see things like energy and cost as well on here, but I'm not going to dive into those today. We'll just keep it at the greenhouse gas inventory level. So this is the regional inventory. You can see here that built environment is the largest piece of the pie for the region as far as emissions go, and then transportation, and then on down from there. And then we've got the sources, which of course, well, we all know what they are now. And gasoline is going to be the largest emissions source for the region, and then oil, propane, and natural gas, and down from there. And not only do we have this for the region, but we also have it for the community level. So we're going to just choose, as I was kind of looking at before, the town of Schodack, because I think, why not? We were there, and we'll focus on this kind of small community that you can see here. The profile is that the largest emissions from Schodack are the transportation sector, which reflects what we probably could understand from the town of Schodack. There isn't really a core center. A lot of people kind of have to travel with cars and to get around to the stores. Their built environment is the second largest sector. which is, it's usually flipping between those two sectors, whether it's going to be built environment or transportation for most of the communities. And then we can look at too the source. So kind of tracking with what we see here in transportation, gasoline is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, which reflects what transportation, obviously most cars are gas powered. And then the second largest is oil propane, which of course is probably heating most of the houses in the town of Skodak. So let's look at another community, the village of Castleton-on-Hudson, which again is a village kind of nested within the town of Skodak, but has a little bit different emissions profile. So built environment here is going to be the largest sector, and transportation is now second largest. And a lot of that is because, of course, people don't have to travel as far. You can walk if you need to, potentially. In this village, it's a little bit more condensed. And then, of course, built environment's going to fall to the top. And then if you look at the sources, it's a very similar kind of match here, where oil and propane are now the largest source because of the built environment being the largest, then down to natural gas, and then gasoline. So it just helps to look at this and see your community and understand where the emissions are coming from, so you can kind of understand the profile and develop a plan for the future. And we can help you with that. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But next, let's go to the change in emissions. So we're going to look here at the changes in emissions for certain communities. Oops. And I'll go back to sharing my screen. And I'm going to pull up the same community that we were just looking at, so you can understand the trends from 2010 to now. And just so you can kind of see here, you choose your county first when you're playing with this dashboard, which you can find on our website. And then you choose the community within the county. So you can see here for the town of Skodak, built environment and transportation have both gone down, which if you remember Todd's slide from earlier, and you can see this on the dashboard as well, this tracks with the regional trend. Built environment and transportation both decreased. And then there's a slight increase in agricultural, industry, and waste emissions for the town, which again also tracks pretty closely with the regional inventory. Now let's look at the village of Castleton. Similar here, but we don't have agriculture, and this will be the case for a lot of communities, the cities, the villages. There's no agricultural emissions, so we're not going to have that. We're just going to be looking at these 4 categories. And then let's take a look at another community that doesn't necessarily track with the regional trends, and show you an example of kind of how this can vary based on things that have happened since 2010 in the region that are important to note, and how we can kind of help you dive into this data. So let's look at the town of Malta, which looks a little bit different here. Built environment and transportation have both gone down just a little bit, though, not on the same scale as the regional level. But also industry and refrigerants has gone up quite a bit, to say the least. And I'm going to ask you guys all what that is, but obviously nobody can respond to me. So I'm hoping somebody has the right answer in their head, which is the Global Foundries. Was created in, I believe it was 2010, 2011. And so obviously this is right after this last emissions inventory, and a huge piece of the puzzle of why the emissions have gone up, especially in this category for the town of Malta. So that's something that the town of Malta, of course, would take into their data and their report and kind of, put in there as additional information. But also that the built-in transportation didn't go down as much as it did for the region. And that is also probably because of Global Foundries, because the increase in residential units, the increase in people commuting to get to Global Foundries, just generally the growth of the town, all important factors to kind of analyze here. All right, so now back to how we can help you look at this data. So we've developed some reports, some template reports, what we can help communities kind of put this data in for your community, understand what's happening, kind of look at that story that we just talked about. This is worth 16 points in the Climate Smart Communities program if you're to kind of develop this report for your community. So that's something you're pursuing. That's a good reason to do this. But if not, we can always just help you kind of look at it and help you figure out what makes sense. So this is kind of the methodology that we would have in here, which is based on of course, the regional methodology. So you don't have to do any of that work. And then pulling some of these charts and graphs and helping describe it and presenting it to your community. You could put it on your website. There's a million different ways that you can do this, but just knowing that our support is there to help you with this process. And now we're looking at point source emissions. So this is a piece of the puzzle that is worth noting because there are a few communities in the region that we've identified the point source emissions for, which are Title V emissions, large industrial energy facilities that are legally required to hold operating permits. So certain communities have point source emissions within them, and we just want to be able to help you kind of identify what that is. Similar to Global Foundries, which is a point source emission, we can see that large kind of entity within the community and help you analyze that. Another one is the town of Waterford, just pulling this example out. Momentum Performance Materials has about 67,000 metric tons of CO2e within the town, which is about like 30% of the emissions for the entire town. So it's important to note that when you see that kind of chart, and you can kind of put that in there and note that that's a big piece of the puzzle there in telling your story. Not all communities will have point source emissions, so it's just critical to note, if yours does, it's good to be able to pull that data out. And then last but not least, just diving deeper into your data. So we, of course, developed this regional inventory and broke it out for every community. And a lot of the data, including things like VMT or vehicle miles traveled, is kind of spread out basically the way that it's done throughout the region. When you calculate VMT, you multiply the number of vehicles by the distance each vehicle travels, and there's a lot of estimates of traffic counts and GPS data and fuel sales. The same estimates kind of go for most of the communities, but that may not be indicative exactly of your community. And you are always welcome to take our data and kind of dive in deeper, as I'll say, and kind of figure out if you, for example, feel like your community has a lot of electric vehicles, a lot of EV adoption, you're really kind of trending toward lower emissions. You may want to kind of do a deeper analysis because your community is not kind of on the average. So that's always an option, but we do have this data available for you, and most communities the inventory will benefit from. So I think that is my last slide here. And on to local climate action planning, introducing Haley Belkanoff here, who's going to take you through that process.
Thank you, Tara. Yes, so you've developed your greenhouse gas inventory either at your municipal level or at your community level. Now, what do you do with that information? How do you plan for the future? Well, you develop a climate action plan. So I'll be talking about what a climate action plan is, how it's developed, the structure of it, and how you can utilize the information in our regional climate action plan to further develop your own climate action plan. So next slide. So a key constituent of CDRPC and a central focus of our work are local governments. Local governments, unlike CDRPC, have the authority to implement many of the mitigation measures that we've outlined in our regional climate action plan. These entities play an important dual role. So first, they can take direct action to reduce emissions from their own operations, as well as adopt policies, regulations, and codes that influence emissions from residents, businesses, and institutions within their jurisdictions. Secondly, they're uniquely positioned to educate and support their communities by fostering climate literacy and participation. So here are some examples of direct municipal action to reduce emissions. So here are heat pumps at the town of Stephentown's town hall. The city of Albany purchased electric landscaping equipment. The town of Ballston installed geothermal and ground-mounted solar at their highway garage. And the village of Kinderhook installed electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Next slide. So what is a local climate action plan? So a way for local governments to strategize emissions reduction goals and initiatives is through the development of a climate action plan, or CAP for short. Local governments can undertake one or both of the two types of CAPs, one for municipal operations or one for a community-wide climate action plan. And I should note that these can be a standalone plan or they can be integrated into your comp plan or a sustainability plan. And CDRPC coordinators at no cost can assist local governments in the development of one or both of these. Next slide. So at both levels, the CAP follows a basic structure, more or less. First is an analysis of baseline emissions. The next is setting reduction targets. So these are short or long-term goals that frame the vision for what your community aims to achieve. And these can align with goals that are in other plans, like our regional climate action plan. So that way, your local government can help contribute to the larger sustainability goals of our region. Next, you can analyze your progress to date, then select specific mitigation measures that you intend to pursue, the ways in which you plan to implement them, and then finally, you've set your goals. How do you plan to monitor, track, and adjust project progress as you meet those goals? Next slide. So we have in our CCAP a list of 67 comprehensive mitigation measures. And these provide local governments with a ready-to-use menu of best practices to choose from. And coordinators at CDRPC have developed this toolbox that communities can use to select measures for implementation and identify the status of those measures. So whether they're planned, in progress, or complete. And this will help in your CAP planning process. And we can filter this list so that you can feature the filtered list in your CAP report. And just to talk a little bit more about these measures. So the measure is defined as, I'll start with the first one, efficient equipment and weatherization, and then we provide a description here of what that means. Then we have the authority to implement. So this particular measure, the state and local governments have the authority to implement this. Then we have the potential reductions by 2035 and 2050. This is at the regional level, but it gives you an idea of the impact. So the number furthest to the right will show the ranking of emissions impact. So by 2035, this has a higher emissions impact of 3. So it kind of helps you in planning, like which measures will have the best outcome or have the greatest emissions effect in your region. And then we have that status option there as well. So we'd be happy to work with you through this and talk through each measure. Next slide, please. So for community CAPs especially, public engagement and outreach is encouraged. This is because the authority to implement certain mitigation measures may not lie just with the local government, but it could be other entities, so such as transportation agencies, businesses, community groups, residents, or utilities. And public input is important when garnering support for your CAP, as well as crafting your goals and methods of implementation. And outreach can take several forms. So here are 2 examples. The town of Austerlitz developed a municipal climate action plan and used Google Forms to receive public comment. And then the town of Claverick held a public hearing for theirs. Next slide. Okay, so you've received your comments, you've incorporated them into your climate action plan, then you're ready to finalize and adopt the report. So we have a template resolution that you can use to adopt. And I just wanted to highlight Schenectady County is the only one in our region that has developed a community climate action plan so far, and that was through support of the Climate Smart Communities program. So neat to check out. Next slide. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about implementation supports, first at the local level and then at the community level. So at the local government level, CDRPC has been assisting local governments with climate actions since 2012 through our support of both the Climate Smart Communities and Clean Energy Communities programs. These are voluntary programs, they're state programs. The Clean Energy Communities program is a program administered by NYSERDA, and the Climate Smart Communities program is a multi-agency program administered by the DEC. So through our support and through community participation, implementation of our CCAP and local government clean energy improvements have been underway for some time. So when you're developing your own climate action plan, if you've been participating in one or both of these programs, you can highlight your participation in the progress to date section of your CAP. So regionally, 47% of our communities have engaged in at least one of these climate programs, and our ongoing collaboration with communities in these voluntary climate action programs is what our CCAP is built on. And if you are pursuing a climate action plan and are participating in the Climate Smart Communities program, for the municipal climate action plan and for the community climate action plan, each are worth 16 points in their priority action. So, next slide. Now for community-wide implementation support. So community scale government supported campaigns are an effective way to encourage the adoption of clean energy technologies. These are part of NYSERDA's Clean Energy Communities program, which is currently closed, but will hopefully reopen next year. And the campaigns have been very successful in our region. We've had 42 communities undertake campaigns, which have generated over 1 million in CEC grants for local governments for their own clean energy implementation projects. And here are just two examples. The Village of East Nassau is currently conducting a community solar campaign, and then Columbia County held a heat pump campaign. Next slide. So achieving the goals outlined in both our CCAP as well as your own local level climate action plan depend on empowering individuals, families, small businesses, farms, and nonprofits to take action. There are currently a wide range of programs these entities can take advantage of to reduce emissions, improve energy efficiency, and transition to clean energy. And here are some of them here that are noted in our CCAP. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, talking about the structure of your CAP, one component of your CAP will be discussing monitoring and tracking progress. I like to describe CAPs as living documents, meaning that as you make progress in achieving your goals set out in your climate action plan, you can adjust the implementation measures, you can adjust your mitigation measures based on a certain different factors. So those could be updating your GHG inventory periodically and analyzing your progress to date. So here's an example from the town of Austerlitz. They developed a government operations climate action plan and an associated tracking tool to periodically review where they are with emissions, and they've noticed a trend in reduction in diesel emissions. So if that's the case, they can go back to their climate action plan and revise it and see how they're meeting those goals that they've outlined. Another reason you may want to update your climate action plan is for technological updates. Additionally, new funding opportunities and incentives may come about as well that may push some priorities closer to the top that were maybe at the bottom of your climate action plan. So you can kind of reevaluate as you go along. Next slide. So I'm going to pass it back to Tara to talk about this interactive, user-friendly platform that we've developed and how you can explore it further.
Thanks again, Haley. So we have this wonderful Capital Region Climate Action Portal that we've referenced a few times in this presentation, that we developed as a way to kind of visualize our climate action plan, and kind of show you data and actually track the data going forward in the future. So let me just open it up here. If you're familiar with story maps, this is the tool that we're using here to kind of create this. And I encourage you all to click and explore this. It's on our CDRPC website. We give a good overview here of the climate action planning process. You can basically click on the data for the dashboard in here. This actually clicks right out, so it's all live content, it's all interactive. You can explore the dashboard on here. You can also see some data on how the emissions have changed over time. This is all in our regional climate action plan if you want to read the PDF, but this is sometimes just a better way to digest this data and present it obviously visually. So we've got the change in time, change in emissions over time from 2010 to 2022. We've got some wonderful maps here that show community level analysis of emissions for the region. This could be really cool to dive into on-road transportation, emissions per capita, those types of things. And we have a slider here, so you can kind of click through those. I'm not going to dive deep into these, but again, go ahead and explore yourself. You can see all the measures here that we've developed for the region through the different sectors and their descriptions. So this is just another way to kind of visualize those measures that, again, you can take to your community and use these measures and kind of develop them out for your individual municipality if they apply. The greenhouse gas projections data, this chart that Todd showed before, we have an interactive view of this for each of the sectors and for all the sectors. So you can kind of see where we're trending and where we're hoping to see for our projected emissions by 2030 and by 2050. We have a great map here of the regional progress, community-wide regional progress, I should say. This map we did not develop. This is from NYSERDA and shows the EVs in the region by region, the EVs registered. And you can see that trend over time as well. So it's pretty cool. This is obviously a lot of data that we don't manage here at CDRPC, but sharing this resource, if you're not familiar with it, you can kind of look into this a little bit closer and we can again see the trends in the future as well. And then you've got this EV charging station network data from Evaluate New York, which is another cool visualization of EV charging infrastructure throughout the region and the state. This one doesn't embed very well, but you can click on this link to kind of explore further. Solar installations capacity and by project for the region. You can see by county who is winning, I guess, as far as projects installed or by capacity and total projects. So it looks like Saratoga is at the top by capacity, but if we look at the total projects, we have Albany at the top by number of projects. So that likely means that there's a lot more smaller projects in Albany County than there is in Saratoga, where there's probably some larger projects. And this data goes through 2025, June of 2025. So we'll be updating this in the future as more data comes in to NYSERDA's website. We also did a mapping of carbon sequestration, so you can kind of see land cover change from 2010 to 2022 by acres, type of land cover. This map shows all the municipal progress mapped. So we recognize here that we don't have every single project, but we want to have all the projects. So if you're not on this map and you want to be on this map and you have a project that's completed, hopefully with some emissions data, we can share this here. So this is that section by the type of project, but you can explore here and click on the dots and see more information about these individual projects. Some of them funded by clean energy communities and climate smart, and some of them funded just by the municipality or other programs. But this can just give you a good perspective of what communities are doing in the region, municipalities specifically are doing in the region. So again, we encourage you to explore this and get in touch with us if your project isn't on here and you feel like it should be. Haley mentioned the Climate Smart and the Clean Energy Communities programs and what they do for communities to support communities. This particular map shows the Climate Smart Communities registrations over time, which is just incredible to note. The communities that have taken this up, especially in the last few years, there's been quite a bit of interest in pledges, which is basically entering the Climate Smart Communities program and certifications. So we're really proud of this, and again, we can support communities with this work through CDRPC. So please reach out to us for more information. Gonna let the graph finish up because it's so cool to see the progress and where we've come. We've seen about $9 million in CEC grants come to the region from NYSERDA since 2016. So another pretty high impact thing that a lot of those projects that you saw on that map were a result of that money. And here's a cool chart showing who's got the most money and where they're. Columbia County has about 3.4 million of that 9 million, and then Albany County, and then you can see by different town stuff what is being pulled in, and these are all match-free grants. So it's pretty amazing. And the campaigns that Haley mentioned before, communities undertaking these types of campaigns and getting their residents engaged in this type of work.
Yeah, so we're at time, and I just want to emphasize that this implementation is really based around what local actions are taken by individuals and by the municipalities and by businesses and others. So we're available to help with doing that, as we've noted in this presentation. So please reach out to us if your community is interested in that support, and we can get into more details about your community.
Thank you all so much for attending today.